The architecture of schools in the United States is interesting because it actually mirrors the architecture that you see outside of school, and particularly in industry. And basically the school was mirrored along the lines of a factory, where you had a certain product coming in and a certain product going out. And the notion was that if you subjected students to a similar process within a set time frame, you will get standard output, if you will. And so we have the word standards, which is the idea that all kids could be standardized, which was okay in a world where majority of the kids just needed a basic high school education to get a job in a factory. But as the world changed and education research kept up with that change, schools, both physically and operationally, did not keep up with the times. So we had this disconnect between what schools were churning out and what the world was demanding, if you will. If you look at the traditional design of schools, you have the most efficient design, in fact one followed by pretty much every school district in the country, is classrooms aligned along a corridor, typically a double-loaded corridor. We call that a cells and bells model of school design. Kids go to a cell, the bell goes off, and then they go to another identical cell. So what we're saying is that is an efficient way to deliver education, but not an effective way to deliver education. The reason schools look the way they look is because there's a process through which these schools get developed. And the process is that somebody makes a decision about what kinds of spaces are needed. And the decision about what kinds of spaces are needed has nothing to do with learning. It has to do with how do I accommodate a given number of students. So in this conversation about what goes into a school, there has been no discussion about what education is supposed to look like. It's just a matter of divvying up space to accommodate a fixed number of students. And since you already have a mental model of what that is supposed to look like, you basically go in and ask the architect for the same exact model, the one that you're familiar with. And so that is a big problem. And in order to avoid that problem, we need to start again with teaching and learning. Some people would say that our work is cutting edge and not mainstream, which is kind of interesting because it's not really cutting edge. I mean, what we're doing with schools is what we think everybody should be doing with schools, which is kind of meeting the world where it is as opposed to where it had been 30 years ago. So just because we are, I mean, it's kind of sad in a way that people who are just keeping up with the times are considered cutting edge, you know. And that's just a testimony to the fact that the education establishment hasn't moved with the times. It's not any kind of a credit to us being way out there in the future. But the reality is that I think that the message that we have, which is why not align the design of school buildings with educational theory and educational practice, is one that actually resonates very well with the mainstream. In fact, I think a majority of teachers in New York City, for example, said that the teacher's role has now shifted from that of sage on the stage, for example, to being a facilitator. They all agree with this. So I don't think there's any sort of debate that the world has changed or that education needs to look different. And so it's just a practical questions about how do you go from here to there. That's really the only thing that's preventing the change from becoming more mainstream.